Hello, this is Jon Sermon, church leader based in Suffolk in the UK. And those of you who've been following my regular videos will know that most days I issue one and I call it encouragement video. And the reason is that I'm longing to offer encouragement to people during this coronavirus period. Now today I have had an interesting day so far. Which includes a lot of what you might think of as discouragement, and yet some significant encouragement, which I want to pass on to you for your benefit. Firstly, if you're very observant, you're already noticing this nasty mark on the top of my head. Yes, I suffered an injury to my head today, and that's part of the discouragement. But I'll give you a fuller picture and then bring in how God has brought me through to encouragement despite the circumstances. Well, today, in one of my two churches, the one at Lowestoft, we were having our first attempt at a gathered service, some congregation coming in. Now, we can only do that in a very limited way, with fewer chairs, with everyone keeping social distance, wearing masks, not allowed to join in the singing, and using hand sanitizer and all the precautions necessary. And that's right and proper. And equally, a great many of our people are not yet ready or feel safe enough or that it's appropriate or they can't get transport. So many reasons that some were not at it, including from my Halesworth congregation, who did not have a gathered service this morning, although they'll have one in a few minutes this evening. Well, the plan, therefore, was to try and minister appropriately to the few who come and gather in the building, alongside others who come in through the technology of Zoom to a virtual church. And we did it, in fact, for the first time in this joint way last Sunday as an evening service based at Halesworth, and the technology supported us well and worked fine. This morning we had technical difficulty after technical difficulty. For example, the way I put out hymns and songs is I use iTunes within the computer, and I have a certain number of them here on this laptop, but most of my iTunes are on my main computer in my study. So if I want to use a song that isn't already on here, I transfer it to a memory stick. I've never worked out how to get it to then transfer from that to the iTunes in this computer, so I have to keep the memory stick plugged in and play it that way. That memory stick malfunctioned this morning, and I had chosen songs from it. I then had to change the content of the service to take out those songs and bring in others that I do have on iTunes. And then I had to change the PowerPoint slides to match what we were now using rather than what I'd intended to use. Well, that together with some difficulties of the sound, we've been working on it over the week particularly, and the sound was working okay, both for the people at home on Zoom and for the people in the building through the church PA system. So far so good. The service started, everything was working correctly until I first got to the stage of stopping a screen share for song words and music, and at that point something happened. I don't know what, I haven't yet found out, but I lost my interface to Zoom on my laptop. So I could hear people's voices from home, and I knew they were still connecting, although some of them did lose it. But some were still connecting and were still coming in, but I couldn't see them, and I couldn't access controls to bring up a screen share or do anything. And we had to do the best we could in those circumstances. Now, one of the people who was shut out was actually my wife Ruth, who found that she could no longer access it, so she spent the time instead praying for us, and specifically praying that I would be able to get through the awful distraction that this was and continue to minister appropriately to the people gathered and to those who were still successfully in on Zoom. And in God's grace, I believe that is exactly what happened. Then we did some more tests after the service had finished to try and sort out. One of our church members came back having left. I stood outside to greet people because we're not supposed to hang around inside chatting. to greet people. I saw this lady leave and come back. Didn't know why. I've heard since. She cares for her elderly mother, and the mother had suffered a fall, and our church member could not help her mother up, so she came to get some more muscular people from within our congregation to go and help. She lives so nearby it was possible. Yet another complication. I stayed behind trying to sort out some of the technical difficulties with a colleague. We didn't actually get as far as we'd hoped. And then packing up and loading the stuff into the car, I don't know how, but I misjudged my position in relation to the tailgate and smashed it into my head. Well, as I said, you can imagine that is discouragement, not encouragement. But reflecting back on it, I can see how God was carrying us through, and I can see how it was an illustration of actually much of what I was talking about in the preaching and of life as it is now. That we know we still face enormous difficulties, but if we trust in God to get us through, wow, what a difference it makes. I must now leave this and pack up and go off to the Halesworth Church to hopefully have a successful gathered and Zoom worship this evening. God bless you all.